Drop those drinks. It's time for Sports Around the Bar. Welcome into Sports Around the Bar, your weekly sports talk show. As always, I am Jake, your bartender, and I'm joined on center stool by Drew. And man, college basketball is going on. We got NFL news. It's a great time of the year, even though we don't see the NFL on the field.
It is, and there's been some little bit of upsets too in this bracket. Your guys' bracket has done well so far. You've only missed 7 games out of all the possible games that have been played. So your guys' bracket's doing a lot better than my bracket. Surprise, surprise. Will should be happy about all of his...
You mean Marquette's not winning the whole thing?
Marquette is not winning the whole thing. Surprise.
Man, it's terrible. I was really rooting for him. Honestly, I thought they were a complete team and everything. Obviously, John Mont and all the rest of the boys at Murray State said not happening this year, and they pretty much blew him out of the water. I mean, they ran that game. I'd say it was close at halftime, but after half, it was pretty much all Murray State, and they ran away with it. We're not going to talk about that first, though, Drew. We're going to start with some football news. Let's start with Jared Cook, man, signing a deal with the Saints. Supposedly, it's going to be a 2-year deal here. The journeyman tight end still has something to offer in the receiving game. Do you like this move?
I mean, it's part of the offense that they've been missing, is a pass-catching tight end. So, even though I'm not huge on Jared Cook, but... yeah, this is a good signing for the Saints. It's the right kind of fit. I mean, if you're not going to draft yourself a tight end, and who knows, they still might, why not sign one? And Jared Cook, even though we don't really necessarily like him terribly much,
he's had a good couple of years. I mean, he's had a bad career up before that, but I mean, he had a good year with Oakland last year. He was good before that with the Packers, and you could even say that he had a couple good catches with the Rams when he was on that team. I don't know, man. I like this. I think it's pretty clear. Drew Brees, if they want to win a Super Bowl, they need more receivers than just Michael Thomas.
Right.
Even though I like Traquan Smith as a receiver and everything, I don't think he's necessarily, the next best wide receiver to put out there and say we're comfortable with where we're at. I like the signing. I think it's really good. I think you could do a lot worse than a 32-year-old Jared Cook.
Yeah. Sure, he says he's going to blow it up in New Orleans. Man, it's a possibility. I mean, if
he should. There's no reason he shouldn't, right?
There's just so many weapons.
And he's the most successful tight end to play with Aaron Rodgers in a long time. I mean, you look at all the hype surrounding Martellus Bennett. You look at all the rest of these guys. No one's really panned out. Even, like I said, the closest thing to a good tight end, or successful tight end from Green Bay, I should say, is Jared Cook. Maybe he can recreate that down in New Orleans.
Thanks, Will. Appreciate you popping in, man.
Absolutely, man. We always love to see you in here. Now, Steve also says the Buffalo Bulls, man. Moving on. I called it. You called it, Steve. Good job. I'm glad we made that pick. I thought it was obvious, but apparently not as many people did. I thought at the very least them getting through the first round was pretty much as set in stone as the tournament can be. Also, Sharif says the brackets are screwed, man. That just makes it March Madness, right? I mean, they were pretty much out by Thursday night. That's okay. We're going to hang on there. Hopefully, you got a couple teams still going to the finals.
Yeah.
I
don't.
Yeah, his bracket's shot. Let's talk Justin Houston next.
Let's do it.
Former Chief, man, on his way to Indianapolis. 2-year, $24 million deal. They're going to pay him about $12 a year. That'll go along well nicely with that Kansas City $7.5 they're still paying him. So he's going to get that $20 million number he probably wanted to stay around. Do you think this is a good signing? Did Chris Ballard make the right move here?
Oh, absolutely. It's a great signing. I mean, he's a pro's pro. This guy's going to come out. He's going to compete. He's going to do well for your team. He's going to be a great presence in his locker room. This is exactly what they wanted. The question is how much does he have left in the tank? Now, he's gone out and said he has plenty left in the tank, and he's ready to prove the world wrong. In his comments, he's moving Kansas City on from the past. Even though he wanted to spend his whole career there, he's not going to. But now it's over. Now it's time to prove all the naysayers, all the haters, hey, Justin Houston's still here. I just hope when he doesn't, it's not against my Kansas City Chiefs.
I absolutely agree, man, and they needed pass rush from last year. Look at the way they played on defense. I think that was the biggest need. They played okay in the secondary. They were really good tacklers, especially against the run game. They needed that penetrator that could get back there and get after the quarterback. If Houston's on the field, he can be that guy still. Even at 29, 30 years old, I think he's going to be able to put up enough sacks and generate enough pressure to keep Indianapolis, in those playoff games that they really seem to struggle with. I know they kind of held Houston in check, but you could tell once they went up against a team like the Chiefs, there really wasn't anything they could do defensively to slow them down. I think Houston, at the very least, can make a few plays and try to get back there and throw the quarterback off rhythm.
Yeah, and he is a decent run stopper. He's not the greatest, but he'll also help in that. Sorry, I had a comment here and I lost it. Oh, Ron says he's happy his Ducks won. He says he lives in Oregon. He He says
they can make the Final
they can
Four.
make the Final Four.
If not the final. I think you might be drinking the Kool-Aid there a little bit, Ron.
12 seed going all the way there. That's tough, man.
That's bold. If you really believe that, man, put a couple bucks on him down in Vegas, because if it does come to fruition, you're gonna get a pretty good return on that, man. I mean, I wouldn't pick him. I didn't pick him in this past game, but then again, I also said Wisconsin's kind of handicapped on offense. They're not really an offensive team,
right.
And that's one thing I don't like in the tournaments is teams that don't score consistently. It was a good win. This is a great job by Oregon to get through, beating a 5 seed in Wisconsin. But now that they get to match up against Irvine next, so
right.
I don't know, Drew. If they can probably get out of the next round too.
They're gonna make a Sweet 16 run, huh?
Yeah, but then odds are they're going to play a team like Virginia or maybe Ole Miss, if that or not Ole Miss. They lost today, Oklahoma. And I don't know. Maybe if Oklahoma can upset Virginia, then maybe they can go 8. But I don't know, man. I wouldn't bet Final Four. That's a little tough. That's a little much for me.
Chris asked if anywhere, where would you see Des Bryant end up going? I know that we're going to talk about some remaining free agents. Do we want to go ahead?
Why don't we talk about Des Bryant here? Okay. We'll talk about some of these other free agents coming up, and we'll do that next year. But if you want to start with Des Bryant, he came out today and said, hey, I wish some of these NFL teams would give me a look because I feel like I still have something to offer on the field. I think he's right. I was saying before in our preview of free agency that I think he's still the highest ceiling wide receiver in free agency. Wow. I mean, Golden Tate, great player, but I don't see him taking a game over like Des Bryant can if you get Des Bryant at his best. I really don't see Randall Cobb like that. Or Adam Humphries or any of these other guys, to me,
that have already been signed and have contracts.
Exactly, and some of them for considerably more than what Des Bryant's probably going to get. If I'm a playoff team, like if I'm New Orleans or I'm the Patriots or any one of these teams, or maybe even a hopeful like Atlanta, I'm going to bring him in on the cheap and say, at the best case scenario, we get Des Bryant. That's an elite receiver. Worst case scenario, you get a guy on a cheap contract that you can wash out next year.
To be honest, I mean, I completely agree with you. I just don't know how high that ceiling is anymore, but I'd love to see him on my Kansas City Chiefs team. I'd love to have him as a third receiver.
That's another great one. You're losing guys like Conley and everything, and with Sammy Watkins' availability being up in the air, I would love to see the Chiefs sign this guy because you take a guy coming off an Achilles injury. I know it can be tough coming back. He's still never been the fastest guy in the world, so you're not worried about him outrunning people. You're worried about him using his side and generating just enough separation to catch the ball and get open, and I think he can do that still. I'm willing to bet on a couple, $2, $3, $4 million contract that he can do that.
I agree. Well, let's move on because Steve says Ziggy Ansah is still linked to the Bills. He said hypothetically say that he signs that a good or bad signing for Buffalo.
It's a good signing. You never have enough pass rushers, and still the breadwinner in Buffalo is going to be your defense. I'm not ready to sit there and say Josh Allen and Cole Beasley and John Brown are going to take the NFL by storm on the offensive side of the ball. It helps. You're stepping back towards the right direction, but this is still a defensive team. It's one that needs to get the ball done with ball possession and great defense. I think if you bring a guy like Ziggy Ansah on that can help you rush the passer, I think it's a good move. Again, just like receivers, you can never have enough pass rushers.
Right. No, I think it'd be a great move, too. I mean, I still think this guy has a possibility of getting double-digit sacks. I think 10, 11 is definitely, something he can reach during a season as long as he can stay healthy. And as you say, anytime you can put pressure on the quarterback, the opposing quarterback, it's great. Ziggy Ansah going to any team that needs pass rush is a great signing.
Sharif says, Justin Houston, I'm sure. I thought he was talking about Houston Texans are going to sack Mariota 4 times alone. Just about everybody is. If you look at the way he moves into it, I mean, pretty much get any kind of pressure and make him hold the ball for about 3 seconds, he'll walk into a sack. So I think that's a fair bet. Again, if you're putting any kind of bets out there, I would go take that one to Vegas and feel pretty good about it. What about you? Justin Houston getting back to Marcus Mariota 4 times in 2 meetings?
It's a possibility.
I'd take that.
He seems to rotate the pressure a lot.
See, to me, that's the biggest question. If he's healthy, I think he gets it. Is he going to be healthy when we play him week 16 or 17 towards the end of the season? That's going to be the biggest issue.
Sharif says he can see Des Bryant going to Green Bay, but right after that, Justin says Des isn't coming to Green Bay. He said if we bring anybody back, it would be Jordy.
I think they should do both. I say it a lot. You can't have enough weapons, and you're getting an experienced guy with Jordy that's probably lost a step. I mean, you're talking about Des Bryant maybe not having it. Jordy Nelson didn't exactly look great in Oakland, and he's, 34 now?
Yeah,
35?
Nothing looked good in Oakland last year.
Jared Cook did. And Jared Cook hadn't looked good either, and Jared Cook's only a couple years younger than Jordy Nelson. So I would not want to go into this looking at last year and saying these young guys are going to be enough to keep going, and we'll just sign Jordy Nelson, and we'll be fine. Aaron Rodgers will have enough weapons. That's not good enough. No. If I'm the Packers, you need to do a lot more than that. If you sign both of these guys, I'd still be looking to draft somebody second, third, fourth round in this draft because I think there's a lot of guys that are in that second round territory that can come in and produce right away. You need to get Aaron Rodgers, who's the best part of your team, as many weapons as you can.
I could see them bringing Jordy. I kind of have to agree with, I think it was Steve or Justin, I'm sorry. I don't really see them bringing in Dez. That isn't really the Packers' forte. They're kind of all about drafting. I mean, look at last year's draft, the way they draft like 3 receivers.
Well, that's changed a little bit. I mean, they have kind of moved away from that this year. When you look at it, I mean, they made big signings on defense. Preston Smith, Zadarius Smith, both of those guys on the defensive front are going to be great. And then they also signed Adrian Amos for big money. I think the Packers have kind of realized and looked at the Rams and said, we can pay a couple people.
I get what you're saying, but I just don't see it being Dez Bryant. I just don't. I can see Jordy because he's been there, but look at all those weapons they drafted for him last year in this draft. It's all young receivers.
But when you say that, none of those guys were at the top. They're all just roll the dice kind of picks. I mean, I think the highest was a 4th rounder in Equiminius St. Brown. I think he was a 4th round pick, 5th round pick.
Something like that, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, you haven't significantly invested in receiver because you expected Devonta Adams to take that next step as an elite receiver. I still think he can be, but he didn't necessarily... I mean, I think he had a good year, but it wasn't enough by himself. He couldn't make a team by himself. You still need weapons around there, and if you go in there with just Jordy Nelson, I don't know how comfortable that I'd be with that.
Well, it's not going to be just Jordy.
Okay, Jordy Nelson, the young guys you got, and Devonta Adams. I still think you need more. That's the best part of your offense, right?
I agree.
And Aaron Rodgers is 35. You got to make it happen now. If not now, when? That's all I'm saying. The injuries are coming in.
I'm there with you.
If I'm the Packers, I'm worried about this.
I just don't think Dez Bryant is the answer, and I don't really see them bringing in 2 veteran, older receivers who have lost a step in speed and put him around Aaron Rodgers and his arm. They're going to need young guys that have that kind of speed that blow over the top. I mean, I could see one of them, yes, and like I said, I think it's Jordy, but beyond that, both of them, no. I don't think so.
Also, Ron is asking, with the trade for Odell, could Cleveland make the playoffs this year? Absolutely, man. I think you look at the rest of the way the rest of the division is trending downward, except maybe the Ravens. The Ravens are still in the fight, but they've got their own questions they need to answer. There's no reason Cleveland should not be at least in the running for a playoff spot. If they don't, I think it's a disappointment of a season.
Yeah, absolutely. At this point, they're paper champions. They've won the AFC North. I mean, they're champions on paper.
Exactly, and you always got to be careful with those teams because whenever you say, "Oh, we got a super team coming out of free agency in the draft in the offseason," they usually flame out. So We'll see. I guess time will tell on that. My biggest example for that is Minnesota these past couple of years, but I don't know. I think they absolutely need to expect playoffs at the very least, or at least be in the running.
Yep. Steve said Dez Bryant to Buffalo could be interesting. Yeah.
I think they've kind of spent on receivers already. And you look at Robert Foster there, I think they're going to try to add a younger talent first before they try to bring Dez Bryant in. But I wouldn't fault them if they did. Again, if you sign a guy like this for like a 1-year, $5 or $6 million contract even, I don't care what team it is, I'm going to sit there and say it's a good move. Because at the very least, you might get that guy again. And if you get him for that year, he can help you win games.
Justin says he wants to see that safety that Kansas City let go in green and gold.
Eric Berry? I don't know, man. Again, it comes down to what does it cost and can he get healthy? We've talked about that with a couple other Chiefs like Justin Houston.
Well, he's healthy.
But he's coming off major injuries the past couple of years. Eric Berry's had much more significant injuries to overcome here lately.
And he also said that with Berry there and Amos, nobody's coming across the middle in Green Bay.
If Eric Berry's healthy. That's the thing. Is he going to be on the field? Because I think Eric Berry at this point in his career might be that guy you pay, and then you only get him for 2, 3, 4 weeks before something else comes up. And I hate to say it because I think Eric Berry is one of my favorite safeties of all time. I loved him playing at University of Tennessee. Loved him for the Chiefs as well. The guy's been absolutely fantastic. He battled cancer on top of it. But there comes a point in time where you just can't bounce back, and I think he's there.
Yeah.
Moving forward here, Drew, let's talk about Nakamada Suh, another free agent out there. Where do you see him landing? Because I saw in the comments, Nathan was talking about him going to Indianapolis. I've seen some other landing spots for him as well. He didn't have the best year in the world with the Rams, especially when you want to talk about the guy he was playing next to, and Aaron Donald. Do you see him moving on to another spot and making a huge impact like a couple of years ago when he was on the Dolphins?
Now, when you say that he didn't make a huge impact, I want everyone to kind of think about it. When they think about that Rams defense, it didn't rank that great. It took about 5 or 6 games, and then finally about 5 or 6 games into the season, that Rams game or run game, they stopped the run game. They were getting teams were only getting like 70 yards on the Rams defense. And I'm not crediting it all to him, but I can tell you right now it wasn't their linebacking core. It was that defensive line. And I think Sue played great. He just didn't put up the numbers everyone was expecting him to do. He wasn't putting up all the pressure up the middle towards the quarterback like they thought that those two would do together. I think Sue still has a lot left in his tank. I think Sue can make any kind of team just a little bit better at run stopping. I don't really think he has that kind of speed that's going to put him in there sacking quarterbacks. But anyone that wants to put a big body right in the middle, shoot Kansas City, and stop the run, this is the guy to do it. So when you talk about a team that should take him, any team that has a problem stopping the run, any team that doesn't have someone like Fletcher Cox or Aaron Donald or, a big body right in the middle, this is the guy that you want to be looking at in free agency.
I'll agree to a point. I think he's more of a rotational guy at this point. He's not the keystone of your defensive line anymore. I don't think you can just plug in and play. I think he needs to play about 30 to 40% of the snaps so you can get the best of Nakamada and Sue you can possibly get out of him. I'd like to see him as a third D tackle somewhere, kind of like the role Michael Brockers played for them last year, where he was more of a rotational guy. He would come in to spell the two guys, give him some rest. I think Nakamada and Sue can be that guy and can be dominant when he's in there, but I don't want to see him in there for 40, 50, 60% of the snaps anymore.
Ron says that Sue is meeting with Seattle today and also meeting with the Cowboys.
But I like both of those spots. They're playoff teams. He's kind of shown here lately that he's gotten paid early in his career, and now he wants to play for that team that is going to the Super Bowl, is going to make something happen. So I like these two teams. I think Seattle is still going to be dangerous next year. I'm not going to call them a favorite by any means, but they're still going to be a good team. And Dallas as well. I mean, you look at the defense that's in Dallas already. If they can pick up a guy like Sue on the cheap to put on that defensive line, I love that move.
And Sharif, of course, wants to see Sue to be
wearing a Ravens jersey. Yeah, how did I know? But he's right. I think he's entirely right. And when you look at the Ravens defense, you look at some of these subtractions, I don't have any problem bringing on a veteran presence and then drafting as well, and you let him be that next kind of, I don't want to call it a bridge because it's an overused term, but you let him be the guy that hands the keys off to the next generation of talent.
Yep, I agree. And then real quick, Ron also says he's been hearing Dez to Miami and Jets and Seattle. Out of those three, which team would be a good fit? He says he thinks Seattle. He
out of
would
those
give Russ
three,
a nice target.
Out of those three, I'd like to see it be the Jets because I still think Sam Darnold needs more targets. He needs consistent guys. And at this point, I don't see Dez Bryant as much more than like a high-end possession receiver. I think he can be one of those guys that can move the chains a lot for you. He can make some space and make some difficult catches that when Sam Darnold's under pressure, he's going to be throwing the ball up for. I like to see him in that kind of role more than Seattle. I don't think Seattle really utilize him. I think we've seen them kind of do that with Brandon Marshall the past year and everything.
That's exactly what I was just about to say. You're literally repeating what you did in the past. And maybe Dez Bryant's a little bit above what Brandon Marshall was, but when they bring in that kind of older receiver, big body type receiver, Russell Wilson didn't utilize it. I'm not saying Russell Wilson didn't try. I'm just saying it didn't seem to really fit in Russell Wilson's scheme and the way he likes to play.
I agree. I don't think schematically they try to use the smaller and faster guys that generate some space and can do the stuff with the ball after they catch it because Russell Wilson is one of the best quarterbacks, if not the best, at buying time in the NFL.
Yeah. So then when you look at the other two teams, Miami and Jets, I don't think Dez Bryant's going to sign with Miami. Even though I think he would if it was last case scenario, I think the Jets is the best option. I agree with you on that one.
And I'm not going to pretend like this turns the Jets into a playoff team. They're not sweeping the Patriots in their season series or anything like that. But I still want to see him go in and wear that jet green because I think of those three teams, that's probably the best fit. I'd still like to see him in somewhere like New Orleans again. But if I had to go with someone that you said, I'd say Jets.
Chris is taking a page out of your book, and he's hating a little bit, and he's saying,
How is that my thing now?
Sam Darnold,
what have I said that's hateful right now?
You're so hateful. Sam Darnold is a waste. Man, I don't know if I can say that. I don't know, man.
Let me say pump the brakes, Chris, because, again, what did you put around him last year? Shoddy offensive line play, no real running backs. I mean, I still like, what's his name from Cleveland?
Isaiah Crowell.
I still like Crowell. I still think he's an okay player. I think he got a bad rap because he couldn't carry the load himself
he's released
for the Jets. And no receivers, especially when guys like Anunua got hurt. I mean, he was thrown to Robbie Anderson. You can't sit there and tell me he's a waste. I'll give you this. He's a waste if they don't ever put anything else around him.
Big contract Robbie.
Yeah. He's a waste if you don't ever put any other weapons on the field with him. But you can't sit there and say after 1 year he's a waste. That's where the Cardinals are at, and the Cardinals look like they're about to blow up their franchise. I mean, they're sitting there with the TNT plunger, about ready to blow up and hit the reset button again. So I'm not going to say he's a waste. I get it. You didn't have the rookie year you want to see. He wasn't Baker Mayfield coming out of it. But if you listen to all the experts, all the quarterback guys, they say they like a lot of his throws. They say he made some good decisions, especially in the stretch when he calmed down with the interceptions. He's made some good plays. I think going forward, You're still going to have to put weapons around him, but he's in a good spot still.
What's going on, Jason? Glad you could join us. Sharif said Russell Wilson's last year of his deal, and he also said hating Jake and laughed. I mean, it's too funny, man. You think Russell Wilson's going somewhere? You think he's leaving Seattle?
Well, there is the rumors, and so far they're just rumors. I haven't heard anything except the initial wave of he might go to the Giants and all this stuff, and they're holding out because they know they're going to get Russell Wilson. He's not going anywhere for another 3 years, and let me tell you why. He's got 1 year left on his contract. And then Seattle's going to say, well, we can't re-up him. Let's franchise him. Because it's much cheaper to do that than to go without Russell Wilson. And then year 2 is going to come by, and they're going to be looking at it just like Kirk Cousins, and they're going to say, let's franchise him again. And then maybe they do it for the 3rd year, because you can do up to 3 years of a franchise tag. The 3rd year is pretty, ridiculously expensive, so usually you don't see that. I think they're going to franchise him twice. They got 1 more year on the contract. There's no reason to worry if you're a Seattle fan. You're at least going to get 3 more years out of this kid. I say kid, I mean, he's a veteran quarterback at this point. You're going to get 3 more years out of Russell Wilson, at the very least, if you never re-up with him. And then, by then, you'll be ready to make that decision. That's 3 years down the road. Don't worry about that.
I think they'll get a contract. I think it won't be an issue at all. I mean, he's won them a Super Bowl. He's brought him to 2 Super Bowls. I mean, yeah, maybe you could say it was his defense, but when you look at this kid play, I can call him kid. When you look at him play,
Matt Flynn wasn't leading you to the Super Bowl.
No,
that's what you're trying to say.
He can straight ball. I'll say it again. If he was in any other offense, we're talking Russell Wilson, top 3 best NFL quarterback in the league. They're run first. Everyone's got to remember they're run first. He doesn't turn the ball over. He's played injured. He's played with 0 weapons around him, and this guy seems to keep on doing it, keep pushing this team to the playoffs. He's going to get a contract. Seattle's not going to let him go anywhere.
Jason is saying Russell Wilson to New York, but I'm saying, what could the Giants possibly give now that Odell Beckham is gone? What could they possibly give to get a trade like that at this point? Because, like I said, they're not going to let him go for 3 years. Feasibly, it just can't happen. It's GM malpractice if he goes out there and lets Russell Wilson leave when this contract expires without throwing a franchise tag on him. It really is. There's no ifs, ands, or buts around it. I mean, it would take 3 first-round picks at the very least before we're even in the ballpark of what it is. And if I'm Seattle, I'm going to say I'm still holding on to him. I'm going to let you draft a quarterback, and then I'm going to trade for him when I know he's good.
Oh, Chris said that Russell will probably end up playing baseball. He already chose football over baseball once.
I was going to say, as much as everybody hates the franchise tag, it pays you really well. And when you're in that category like quarterbacks are, that you're the highest paid position group, he's going to be very handsomely rewarded for staying in Seattle if they do have to use a franchise tag on him. I wouldn't worry about his financial well-being and make him jump over to baseball.
And Justin says, what about the Chargers? What if Phillip Rivers is done? Do they want to get a good quarterback?
Well, I mean, they've already kind of done this dance for the past couple of years. If you remember, 3-4 years ago, they were talking about trading him to the Titans when we had Ken Whisenhunt and everything like that. So, eventually, you have to get to the point where you draft a replacement. I think they've kind of been doing that. You know, they've picked up some guys behind him, like the Ohio State quarterback, whose name I'm drawing a blank on right now, that was their backup. You know, they brought Tyrod in for this year. I don't think they really expect any of those guys to grow into it, but it's kind of like a what-if scenario where maybe this guy catches fire and all of a sudden we have that backup plan to Rivers. But he's been one of the most consistent, healthy quarterbacks. I don't think you need to worry about him falling off immediately. The question is going to be, is he the guy that you can put enough around to win a Super Bowl? Because forever I've said Phillip Rivers hasn't anything around him, right? Well, this year, he had everything around him, right? And maybe you can sit there and say it was one bad game. Maybe you got to sit there and say Phillip Rivers choked, or the offense choked, or the defense choked,
his
or
run game,
the whole team choked.
But
true, but I mean, still, come on, Drew.
Receiving weapons was then they got Hunter Henry. I mean, for the most part, if for Chargers injury-prone plague seasons, they were better than they normally are on injuries.
True.
I'll give you that, because they still had a lot of injuries.
So if they had everybody, can they win a Super Bowl with Phillip Rivers?
Yes.
When's Tom Brady going to retire? That's what I got to say. I don't know. I mean, I hate to say it, but Phillip Rivers, again, has not had that postseason success. He might be the best regular season quarterback in history to this point.
They didn't have their best corner. They didn't have their tight end. Their run game was not 100% healthy.
And he has made an AFC championship, if I remember right, like way back early in his career. So it's not like he hasn't had a little bit of success in the playoffs.
Too long.
I'm not going to sit there and say the guy's like Andy Dalton that he gets to the first.
Too many of these to remember.
Yeah. I'm not going to say he's Andy Dalton and gets to the first round and gets just totally blown up and never really has any success in the playoffs. Yeah. He's not that guy. I just wonder if he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback, if he's really got it in him. Because I've said forever I think he's an elite quarterback. I think he's one of the greats. But, you know, it still kind of hurts your resume when you're talking about the Hall of Fame having never won or appeared in a Super Bowl.
No, it absolutely does. But You asked me, do I think if everyone on their team stayed healthy, can they go to the Super Bowl? I said, yeah. I do believe that.
Maybe
that.
it was just one bad game because they looked okay against the Ravens. The Ravens defense did a pretty good job of manhandling them still.
No, they did.
I mean, that win was on the defense really shutting down Lamar Jackson and everything else.
And I know we knocked a lot of them during the season saying they really haven't played anybody tough, and everyone they played tough they lost to, but I just think that team, if everyone can stay healthy, I mean, I'm talking about a corner. I mean, that's their best corner. He was gone. Their tight end. Obviously, we all know how much he loves tight ends because look at Antonio Gates. Melvin Gordon was hurt. They tried to put in those other two guys. Didn't really seem to pan out as well. And even when Gordon came back, I still don't think he was 100% healthy. 100% healthy. So, it's a possibility.
Eric also says, Rosen to the Chargers. Look, I wouldn't hate it because whoever picks him up and makes a trade for this kid is basically going to have to pay nothing against the salary cap for the first 3 years, and then you get a fourth-year option as well where you're paying him substantial money, but still not that much compared to some of these other quarterbacks in the league. I wouldn't hate it if they did it because you can sit there and groom him for the next couple of years, Aaron Rodgers style. Sit there and say, look, let's hit the reset button. Let's get you back in an offense that we think can work, and we'll get you fired up and everything like that. I think Josh Rosen absolutely would be a good move for the Chargers if they got him, but the problem is they're in win-now mode. And when you're in win-now mode, you don't want to be giving up these second, third, fourth-round picks to go get Josh Rosen when you need those guys to win a Super Bowl in this very second. I think they'd rather win the Super Bowl and then move on to the next quarterback afterward, even if it means blowing up the franchise for another 4 or 5 years, than go get the guy now and just never win.
This is still going to be my spot where I think Will Grier will fall in the draft. I'm not saying first round, maybe second or third round. I think this is the team that will be picking him up. Get a guy that's almost a mirror image of Phillip Rivers and Will Grier.
Now, I know we've spent more time on football, usually like we do, than we meant to, but I want to go to a couple more of these comments because a couple guys made some good points here. Ken says Russell Wilson is a loyal player and he's not leaving, or he would have when the D got destroyed. I absolutely agree with you there, Ken. I think you're absolutely on point with that. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he likes Seattle too much. I know there's all this hype and everything, but that's all rumors. We haven't heard Russell Wilson say anything publicly about maybe moving on from Seattle. And these days, if you're a player and you want to move on, that's what you do. Exactly. You sit there and say, oh, I think I've heard New York is nice. I'd like to play there. He hasn't said any of that. Also on top of it, Chris said...
Sean, what's going on, man?
Good to see you, Sean. Chris said that he really doubts that they would end up franchising him. Look, you have no reason not to. If he's already sitting there telling you behind closed doors that I'm done, you have no incentive to not franchise him because at the very least you franchise him and trade him.
Right.
And get a lot out of him.
Right.
You have to sit there and move him. You can't sit there and not let a guy like that just walk to free agency and get nothing.
Yeah, you can't just let him walk. There's no way.
And again, the players get no choice in the franchise. They cannot sign the tender and sit out for a year, but at the end of the day, I'd franchise him again. I mean, I really would, even if I'm the GM. Even if he sat out all year, I couldn't find a trade partner, I'm still throwing that franchise tag on him back again because I'm going to sit there and say, I'm not just going to let you walk without a fight. You have to do that.
The only person that they hurt when they sit out is them and their paycheck.
Chris also says he doesn't think Brady will ever retire. I think that, again, I don't want to get too far off topic, but it's going to be one of those things that when he does retire, finally, and everyone thinks it's going to be, oh, hey, great, my team can win now that Tom Brady's gone, we're going to be talking about it like, man, I miss those days. You remember how great that guy was? And I'm not a Brady guy, but...
Yeah, when I'm like 70.
Yeah, when you're like
Let me
3
just
years
set
from now.
everything very straight here. Even when Tom Brady retires, the Patriots are not going away if Belichick does not retire. Just run it out there.
I don't think Belichick's going to retire when Brady does either.
I'm just saying, yeah, they'll not have their shiny playboy at quarterback, but he's... If you look at it, just in the AFC Championship game last year, if it wasn't for an offsides penalty, Tom Brady's story would be he threw an interception and his season was done.
And there have been a lot of that. But everyone, that'll be lost in the waves of time here, Drew.
And then everything during the offseason talking about is Tom Brady lost it. Has Tom Brady lost it?
Very true. Very true. And there's been a lot of those moments. I mean, Adam Vinatieri could have missed a kick, or Seattle could have sat there and run the ball on the 2-yard line, or if you go on, there's a lot of close plays. But then again, you could flip it around and say, what if the Giants didn't have those miracle catches in those games? What if Eli Manning didn't have 2 of the best games of his life against the Patriots? What if Nick Foles got hurt and didn't play against him, or didn't drop 600 yards. I mean, there's so many what ifs. I think, again, when you look back at this career, it's all going to be thrown to the wayside. You don't think about that. You're just going to think about what actually happened.
My point to that is that this team is good not just because of Tom Brady. Its majority is
and you're
Belichick.
Right. You're absolutely right. You look at the defensive stats, and everyone's going to sit there and say they haven't had great defenses. I refute that because I don't have this year's statistics, but every year up until this point, since 2003, they've had a top 10 scoring defense or lower, except for 2 or 3 years. And even then, they're finishing like 11th, 12th. Their worst finish was 19th.
Yeah.
So the Patriots have always had a great defense. Now, we've been rambling. I want to go back to this. A little bit more NFL news, and then we'll talk a little bit of basketball before we get out of here. The Steelers released Morgan Burnett, safety. Obviously, he was asking for it. He didn't want to play dime linebacker like they wanted him to play. He really saw his role kind of diminish, so he asked for a release. They're going to grant it to him. Now, they signed Mark Barron to replace. Do you see this as a one-for-one trade? Are they getting better with signing Barron?
They're going to get a little bit younger of a player. They're probably going to get a little bit more speed out of Mark Barron than they did with Burnett. But I think Burnett had a better career than Barron. So maybe you lose some of that leadership, some of that football knowledge that Burnett brought to the secondary of the Steelers. I mean, I'm not saying Barron's a bad player. There's those things that you miss when you lose some players, like when we lost Eric Berry when they released him. You know, all I thought about was, man, that leadership that he brings to this team, how's it going to be replaced? Now, I think they did a pretty good job in the Honey Badger, but when you lose someone like that, it's a struggle, and it's a struggle to figure out who's going to replace that kind of leadership in the locker room.
I agree. Also, going back to the comments here, Chris says Belichick needs to go elsewhere when Brady retires to build another team to prove he's actually that good. Well, you've already seen the Ravens win with a Belichick team. I mean, he built that team in Cleveland. They moved on and won a Super Bowl as soon as they got rid of Belichick, so he's already had that on his resume. I think if he stays put in New England and Tom Brady retires and they win one Super Bowl afterward, or at least get close, everyone's going to be sitting there saying it was Belichick, he put everything in place, and Brady was just the icing on the cake. I think that's what he's trying to play for. I think that's what he's trying to bring on guys like Jimmy G and bring up that next big quarterback for the Patriots, because he wants to win without Tom Brady, because then the story becomes Bill Belichick is the greatest coach in NFL history, not Tom Brady is the best quarterback, and he carried Belichick to these Super Bowls.
Right. Maybe Chris is wishful thinking that it comes to his team.
Maybe. I mean, honestly, there was not that long ago. There was talk around the league about trading Brady and using a guy like Garoppolo who was coming up.
Yeah.
And I get it. It didn't work out that way, and they've won Super Bowls without him. But when you look at the way Brady kind of finished this season, I don't know if I necessarily fault him if they can find that next great guy. If they get an Aaron Rodgers level guy behind him, I think they need to pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, Drew, we've kind of gone on for a minute. Do you still want to talk basketball tonight, or do you want to just save it for Monday, and we'll talk about the entire first round instead of just most of it?
What do you guys think? You guys want us to go over a little bit? I mean, we're not going to dig real deep into all these games. I mean, first round is what it is. You want to talk a little bit of the upsets, maybe the 7 games that they didn't make in their poll?
You mean you don't want to talk about Gonzaga just absolutely murdering a 16 seed?
No.
We can go into that. I mean, 87 to, 43, I believe they had? 49? Yeah, I mean, good job, Gonzaga. They're moving on. Everybody in the world called that one.
Steve says, tourney talk. Of course, we're going to do it on Monday. I mean, if we don't talk about it, we're going to talk about it on Monday. We're not going to ignore it by any means.
All right, well, Steve has spoken, Drew. Let's talk tournament.
Steve, it's your fault, man.
What's the biggest scare? Not necessarily upset, but what was the biggest scare for you in this first round?
Oh, Kansas State. 100%. I had Kansas State in my Final Four in one of
Well, that'd be an upset. I'm saying who came closest to losing but didn't? Because to me...
No, that's my scare. My bracket's gone.
Oh, okay.
I lit my bracket on fire.
The biggest scare for me, Tennessee beating Colgate by 7 points. I mean, you're talking about a 2 seed that was ranked number 1 in the nation, playing what should be a layup in Colgate, a college I've never even heard of, and then winning by 7 points. I get it. I do. I've heard of the toothpaste before. But I going into this should have been Tennessee all the way. It should have been a dominant performance. It should have been like the Gonzaga score. Realistically, it should have been. And then you get to the tournament, and I get it, any given basketball game, it's kind of like football in that regard, which is why we like it so much. But come on, 7 points? You were number 1 in the nation for like 4 weeks. 3 weeks, whatever it was.
It was scary. It was definitely scary for Tennessee fans out there. To be honest, they should have lost that game.
It could be Maryland, too. If you want to talk about scares, I mean, I thought Belmont was pulling it off. I picked that as an upset, an 11 seed going up against a 6. Maryland could have dropped that game. It came down to the wire, and it took one bad turnover by Belmont to get them knocked out of the tournament. I wanted it, Drew. When I was watching that game, man, I just wanted it to be for the upset factor, for the story, for just that good thing to talk about. It didn't quite happen, though. Maryland and the Terps outlasted. The better team won, unfortunately, and Belmont got bounced out of the tournament.
But for a team that makes their first appearance in the NCAA bracket for the national championship, they got to be proud of themselves. I mean, this is a team that's never done it before, like I just said, and they go up against a team like Maryland who has a little bit of a history in NCAA basketball, and they almost beat them.
Absolutely. Now, Steve also said Florida State versus Vermont. I agree, that was a close game, but I have a little bit more respect for Vermont sitting at that 13 seed than Colgate, again, a college that nobody's ever heard of realistically. Going up against a team like Tennessee, I felt like that was the closer game than the Florida State one, but you're right. Florida State, for all their tournament talk and everything, the big win they had in their ACC tournament, came up not lame. They got the job done, but it was definitely a scare for them too.
Yeah, no doubt.
LSU to Yale, another good scare, but I think LSU is just a team waiting for that big disaster of a loss without their head coach. I mean, nobody's really sitting there saying Yale is going to go deep into this tournament, but when you look at the way they've played, LSU that is, you look at the talent on them, it's pretty obvious they're missing Will Mann very badly right now. I think next round might be it for them.
Yeah.
And I had them winning one more, but I think that might be it.
It's a possibility, man. Yeah, it's rough.
Now, was there a game that did not surprise you? To me, it's Kentucky just laying down the law against Abilene Christian. I mean, you look at that, I think Kentucky, again, I've been talking about it, they're a team trending upward. They're starting to find themselves. They're still not the Kentucky of last year. They don't have those multiple first-round, multiple high-end draft picks for NBA guys, I don't think, this year. But it's a team finding itself. They still got great players. For a 2 seed, I still think they're looking like a pretty dangerous squad.
No, they absolutely are. And you asked me what's the game. I think that doesn't surprise me. I think it's Virginia. And I know everyone's like, oh, they're number 1 seed. They're going to lose to a 16 seed again. Now, like I said, this team is on vengeance. And there was no way that this team was ever going to get anywhere near them. And they didn't.
Absolutely. Another upset for me. Marquette getting just totally blown out. Now, I even said beforehand, I could see Murray State winning this game. I wasn't, especially when you have Ja Morant, but it wasn't just Morant. I know he had a triple-double, but it was the rest of the team. He wasn't the guy putting all the points on the board. They had 3 double-digit point scorers in this game on their starting lineup as well. I think it was 4, actually. They absolutely killed them. I mean, I thought this game was at the very least going to be close, and it was up to half. It was like a 2 or 3 point at halftime, I think. And then in the second half, it was all Murray State, and they absolutely blew them out of the water. Can Murray State make a deep run here?
Well, I do think that they can make a deep run, and my question about that is if he does this again, or it goes 2, 3 more games into this...
He's not upsetting Zion. Don't even start.
No, I wasn't about to ask that. Does he put himself in the position to be the second pick in the NFL draft?
Yeah, or NBA, but yes.
Sorry, NBA
I
draft.
gotcha. I do it all the time, too. Yes, he absolutely does. I think if he has a great tournament here, he can solidify himself as the second pick in this draft. And there's no reason he shouldn't be. I mean, he's absolutely a monster. And I don't want to sit there and say he's carried Murray State because they still have a good team around him. But he is definitely the heart and soul of this team. He's like the Zion... If Zion without Duke, or Duke without Zion is absolutely lost, I mean, I'd hate to see what Murray State would look like without this guy. I really would.
Ken asked, what about that fantasy draft? What about it, man? It's going great. We're
Absolutely.
a little over halfway.
We don't want to spoil anything, obviously. We're going to have an entire show dedicated to talking about the fantasy draft. We're going to go into everybody's picks. We're going to do some winners. We're going to go easy on the losers, in our opinion, I think. But we're still going to talk about it.
Are we going to go how we totally changed up the whole entire roster of the NFL?
Yeah, I was going to say, you totally changed the complexion of the NFL, guys. I like it. Even some of these moves that are unconventional, I've liked a lot of this stuff, and it's been entertaining all the way through. Let me just say, you guys threw me for a curveball when the first pick off the board was Will Grier. I was like, okay, we're about to have some fun.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, okay. Well, tune in next time for the 2 through 32.
So, Steve wants to know, better chance at a deep run, Murray State or Buffalo?
Murray State, because they have the top-end talent. But I still like Buffalo to make a deep run. I'm not going to sit there and say it's night and day. Murray State's not way, way out in front for him, but I'd still, if I had to put money on it, I'd say Murray State. And I know you're a Buffalo guy, Steve. I'm sorry. I hate to break it to you. They're a good team, but the best thing about them is their coach. The best thing about Murray State is Ja Morant. I mean, it really is.
Oh, man. I think, to be honest with you, I think it's Murray State as well. I think Florida State's a little bit easier of a team to beat than Texas Tech. I think Buffalo's gonna have a hands full going against Texas Tech. I really do believe that. I think they're beatable. I think Buffalo can do it. You're telling me the two out of that for just the next game alone. I think Florida State's a little bit better of a matchup for Murray State.
I totally agree, and we can't get out of here without talking some upsets, though. And you know I have to do it to you, Drew. Irvine versus Kansas State. I mean, what happened? What happened?
Terrible shooting. I think they're about, I think they're like 33% from field goal percentage. I mean, it was god awful.
This was my sleeper team. You talked me into them.
Dude, it was god awful. It was god awful. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to sit there and say that Irving didn't play a great game and that they deserved the win. They obviously did, but Kansas State did not show up. Those seniors did not show up. That team just seemed to just flop on its own. They tied their own shoelaces together.
Absolutely.
It just seems like that's what they did.
I totally agree with you. Is there another game that you want to look at and sit there and tell me there's a worse upset for you in this tournament? Because I'm looking at it right now, Drew. I don't really know. I think that might be the worst one for me because I had them getting all the way to the Sweet 16. Actually, I had them going Elite 8 in mine, beating Virginia, upsetting the number 1 seed, and then they come in and get clubbed in the first round. I mean,
No.
Is there a bigger upset to you?
No, but there is
Not
one.
so far?
There's one game I'd like to talk about, though. Is my Iowa Hawkeyes against Cincinnati and all the negativity that I said when Iowa was going to win, and now look at them and they won.
I wasn't concrete in this game, but I felt pretty good about Cincinnati.
No, you weren't. You didn't talk crap.
I was going to say, I wasn't sitting there saying Iowa stood no chance, but I felt pretty good about Cincinnati. I felt like they were the better team going through there, and it was a consistency thing with drawing a blank with not Cincinnati, with the other team that we're talking about. Help me out.
Who are you talking about?
Save me, Drew.
Iowa?
Anytime. Yes, Iowa. Thank you. I don't know why I just had the worst brain fart in history.
I got lost. That's what you're talking about.
It was the inconsistency for Iowa through the season. That's why I didn't think they were really going to stand much of a chance here in this season or in this matchup. But they showed up. Sometimes when you're inconsistent, that means you have good games as well. Yeah. I want to see if they can keep this roll going into the next round because I think I'm still going to say it's a one and done.
Tennessee's going to be a tough matchup.
Well, you say that, but then Colgate almost beat them. So who knows? Maybe Iowa's got the right end of the bracket. Before we get out of here, obviously we haven't seen teams like Duke win. We haven't seen teams like North Carolina. Do you see any one of those guys getting upset by a 16?
Nope.
Okay. All right. See you later. Before we go into special thanks and everything, Drew, we still got a few games left to play. We're going to talk about them on Monday. Is there any game going into the into round 2 that you're really looking forward to? Is there a squad that you want to sit there and see make a splash?
I think it's just the team I was talking about, Iowa versus Tennessee. I think Tennessee is beatable. I think they look past a lot of teams, and I'm an Iowa Hawkeye fan. I think that's a game that I'm definitely going to keep my eye on.
To me, the matchup is Auburn versus Kansas because I look at that, and now that my upsets are out, a couple of my guys that I called to make deep runs here, I think those might be my next 2 favorites to make kind of like an Elite 8, maybe even Final 4 appearance, and maybe upset someone like the Tar Heels. I want to see these guys play. I can't wait to see which one of them comes out on top. If I had to pick one of these guys for like a redraft bracket or something like that where you're picking everything from the winners, I'd be looking at these 2 guys because I think they're still talented squads. I want to lean more towards Kansas, even though I picked Auburn beforehand. I feel like with their performance, I like Kansas a little bit better now. I've kind of swung a little bit towards the other direction. I'm hoping Auburn can pull it out for my bracket's sake. But I think going into the next round, that to me is the game to watch, at least at this point. I think it'll be a good one. And then I also want to watch Buffalo because I have them going on, beating Texas Tech. That's going to be a great matchup for me.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Do you have one you're looking at? Or
Nope. I think that's pretty much it. I like the Kansas matchup. I like to see what Wofford can do against Kentucky. But really, that's about it.
All right, guys. Well, we will be back on Monday to talk a lot more college basketball. Obviously, round 1 will be finished at that point, and we'll be on to round 2. We'll be talking about some of that action, too. Drew, we have some special thanks.
Yeah, guys, thank you so much for joining us today. I know it was kind of a funky show, but we had fun always talking sports with you. A lot of NBA, a lot of NFL with some NCAA thrown in there. But I appreciate all the guys' comments that you got, and special thanks out there to Nathan, Sharif, Steve, Will, Chris, Ron, Maddie, Justin, Jason, Ken, Eric, Sean. You guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Absolutely. And Steve, have fun at that Texas Tech game, man. I hope Buffalo can pull it out. I picked them. This has been that matchup I've been kind of leaning on here into this.
I also picked them
into this tournament. Yeah, we were both on Buffalo to make a little bit deeper of a run. I know I'm not going to say Elite 8 like last year. I'm going to say Sweet 16 probably is where they beat their match, and hopefully Michigan for my bracket's sake. But we'll see. They're one of the more interesting matchups going forward. We're going to talk about them and everybody else going forward. So, Drew, for Sports Around the Bar, I'm Jake, your bartender. This is Drew, and we will see you guys next time.
See ya.